boogeyman is coming.
You like scary movies?
Uh-huh.
What's your favorite scary movie?
I don't know.
You have to have a favorite. What comes to mind?
Hi, I'm Chucky. Wanna play?
I am the devil, and I am here to do the devil's work.
We have eternity to know your flesh.
Piss your pants. I said, piss your pants.
I think we just picked up Dracula.
I'm your boyfriend now, Nancy.
You go right on you.
Stay when you're down here with me. You Bluffs! My family's always been in me.
A whole family of Draculas.
So, horror movies.
Hell yeah.
It is February, and that means it is almost Valentine's Day. Now, there are very few Valentine's Day themed horror movies. There's Hospital Massacre, there's Panic at Hanging Rock, there's Valentine from the early 2000s, which is awful. But there's one movie that stands head and shoulders above the rest in the land of Valentine horror movies, and that movie is My Bloody Valentine. That is the movie we are talking about today. And here to discuss it with me is a guy who buys more Blu-rays than maybe anybody else I know. He's a concert photographer. He's a wrestling photographer. He's an all-around professional photographer. Ed Battis, how's it going, man?
It's going great.
So full disclosure, Ed's been my supplier when I'm covering a film and I don't own the newest deluxe version of the Blu-ray, because this dude, like I said, buys fucking everything. And those special features have been really helpful with research on some of the stuff I've covered in the past year. So thank you, man.
Anytime, man. It supplies something that I listen to all the time. So I listen to all your podcasts on that stuff. So yeah, just it's my thing to do.
Well, dude, you picked My Bloody Valentine. I take it you like this film.
Yeah, I love it. And full disclosure, I've only seen it a handful of times. It's just that good in my head. I only discovered it probably a few years ago too. But I love it.
Oh, so it's new to you. So when you first saw this movie, did you see like the real version of it? Because if you just discovered it in the last few years, like the whole time you've really known about this movie, you could have seen either version.
Probably the butchered kind.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't have been like the Lionsgate DVD you saw the first time?
Yeah, it might have been. I mean, it was something I rented from the library, so it was definitely a DVD or a older Blu. It was no, you know what it was? I think it was the older Blu-ray. Not obviously not the one that came out last year.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you like this movie. You're not alone. It's Quentin Tarantino's favorite slasher movie.
Hell yeah.
When I first saw this movie, I saw the butchered version for sure on VHS in sometime probably in the late 80s or early 90s. I don't hate this movie. I like this movie a lot. I think this movie has a very special place in the history of slasher horror films. It's early in. There's not a lot of stuff before it, and it has a tie to like one of the most iconic slasher movies, the movie that really, I mean, aside from Halloween and Black Christmas, established this genre with Friday the 13th. This has a close tie to that film. So we'll get into all that though.
Right.
Every film has a starting point. This one starts in Canada. It's pretty obvious when you watch this movie that it's Canada. Would you agree?
Oh yeah. And I think that's a lot of the charm to it. I think that has to do with a lot of the charm to it.
Yeah, I love that, like, they made sure that you knew, because it never specifically says, like, hey, you're watching a movie from Canada. This is Canada. But they do things like put Moosehead in the movie everywhere possible, which in 1980, you weren't getting Moosehead in, like, Nevada. You know what I mean? Like,
I was actually going to ask you, have you ever had that? I didn't know if that was a prop beer or something.
No, Moosehead's real, man. Moosehead's a Canadian beer. It is not a beer I'm a fan of, but I've drank some Moosehead before.
Is it just like Bud, like just normal or PBR kind of shit?
I mean, it's a standard. It would be in Canada. It just falls in line with, like, Molson and Labatt and the rest of the Canadian, like, domestic beers.
Okay. They also don't have any Canadian isms. Like, you don't hear like they never say about at all.
Oh man, there's a little bit of that in there.
I didn't hear very much, like, of their vernacular come through or how they say words or stuff.
They're working very hard at being American.
Yes.
But it sneaks through, and I mean, part of it was, and we'll get there, but there was definitely a choice made. This movie wasn't going to just be a Canadian market film.
Mm-hmm.
So they needed it to have appeal in as little as things as, like, it's the chief of police, but it's the sheriff, and there's not a sheriff in Canada. You know what I mean?
Okay.
That's not a thing. So there's little things like that throughout it. But so John Dunning and Andre Link had a company called Cinepix. Cinepix had made some Cronenberg films, including Rabid, and they signed director George Mihalka to a 2-picture deal based on his previous film Pickup Summer, which had been like a comedy movie, just
mm-hmm.
It's
like Meatballsy.
Yeah, absolutely. And his first film for them was meant to be a comedy like that one. But due to issues with the schedule, with the people he was collaborating with, who both worked for National Lampoon, it had to be put off. And the studio was using Canadian tax dollars to make films. And that meant that they had to make a film by a certain time, or they wouldn't have that funding available to them. So they had another film that they had an outline for. It was a horror film that had been written by a guy named Stephen Miller. Not the Stephen Miller who just tried to ruin the American government, but a different Stephen Miller. This guy wrote a lot of TV, including like Airwolf and Magnum PI. George read it and he liked it. He thought it was a little bit different than the slashers that he had seen up to that point, mainly because it wasn't like kids in peril, you know? Mm-hmm. It had a different feel to it. It had a little bit more adult feel to it. So once George was on board, they hired John Baird to begin writing the screenplay. While the screenplay is being written in Montreal, George begins looking for a place to shoot the film. They knew they were on a tight schedule. They only had 5 to 6 weeks to write the screenplay. And they knew they needed a mine. And they looked at a few of them. They found their winner in Sydney Mines, Nova Scotia, with the recently closed Princess Colliery Mine. The town of Sydney Mines embraced the idea of the film taking over for a month or more, and the town was great to work with.
They sure as fuck did embrace it too much, as you'll
a little bit, yeah. But the mine was what sealed the deal for George. It was still operational, and it looked shitty. It was perfect. So George finds his town, finds his mine, heads back to Montreal for a few weeks to work on the film. They wanted to make a slasher that stepped outside of the normal, like, carefree kids in peril, you know. It's not kids in houses on a street that are being terrorized. It's not kids at a camp. These are, like, young adults that work a shitty job in a mine, and, like, the only thing in this small town that they're going to have to blow off steam is this party at the fucking Union Hall, you know? Like, it's different. And, like, and it touches on things that, like, Halloween and Black Christmas and Friday the 13th didn't, in that, like, you know, there's that dynamic in the beginning of this film with the story of Harry Warden, where it's like, you know, the management not caring about the workers and the negligence that caused the original accident.
Right.
And like they address the fact that like jobs are scarce and these kids are looking at a life where like future's kind of bleak. You know, there's a lot of side shit that's in this story that's not usually there in the genre at that point. They had said, both Maholka and Baird, that what they were trying to make was like the Deer Hunter of horror films.
That I could feel that.
Yeah, I can too. I'm not sure that's what they did, but they did make a working man's horror film.
I mean, I was actually going to write that as a note. Like, this seems like it could almost be like the comeback from war scenes in Deer Hunter, where it's shot right around Deer Hunter was shot around you, right?
Part of it, yeah. Part of Deer Hunter was shot around here, yeah.
So like, it seems like this could just be like the bar scene seems like it could just be a shitty bar in outside of Pittsburgh. Like, it has that gritty vibe of that.
Yeah, dude, no, absolutely. It's the parallels between small town Nova Scotia and small town Midwest industrial area are, I mean, it's all mining and steel, man. You know what I mean? Like, all of that, the towns that spring up around that kind of shit are all kind of the same in ways.
Right.
I mean, these kids hang out in like a junkyard, you know,
exactly.
like,
what were they even making?
What? The mine? It was coal mine.
No, the food that they were making on the car.
Oh man, so I wasn't sure at first. I watched it back. I actually watched that scene back a couple of times because at first I thought he was trying to make like a weird little like Dutch oven meal or something out of it, you know? But I think there used to be, I have these vague memories. Like, I'm old, but I'm not old. I have these vague memories of TV dinners that were not meant for the microwave.
Okay. I mean, yeah, that's what they originally, they were tin and stuff. So that makes sense. It could have, that'd match up.
Yeah, I think it was, I looked and I couldn't find any specifics because like that's such a minor thing. Nobody's ever asking about it in interviews or anything.
Right.
So,
it's like, it almost looks like an old ass Hungry Man's, I guess.
Yeah, I think that's what it was. I think it was like an old frozen dinner kind of thing.
Okay, that makes sense.
But this isn't like a final girl movie, you know? Like, there's a girl that survives to the end, but it's not that same formula. So the casting starts at this time too. And one of the things I love about this kind of horror film that I think this period got right, and in the 90s and 2000s, it started to get a little bit wrong, is having actors you don't know. Horror movies casting kind of like non-familiar people, I think lets you cut that line of believability. And what it also did was it let Canada compete with Hollywood in a way that it couldn't in other film genres. Because, you know, at that time, you weren't going to have, and I mean, eventually this changes. Vancouver becomes a huge place for Hollywood films to be made. But when you're in 1980, that just wasn't the case. But things like horror films where you didn't have to have big stars let Canada produce some things that were able to become big U.S. releases. And that's true for this cast. TJ was Paul Kellman. The only thing he really did after this movie is Black Roses.
I like that. I like that movie. That's fun.
Black Roses isn't a bad movie.
No.
But that's it for him. He's kind of became like a weird recluse. Like George Maholka talked about how, and for the record, I think sometimes George Maholka's full of shit.
Oh, he's I don't like him at all. He gives me those vibes that oh god, who did Exorcist? But like just kind of an asshole. And
George Maholka totally comes off as an asshole. He also like, so there's a couple of times in interviews that I watched with him where he straight up lies. And in one of them, like a dude calls him out on the lie. And he's like, oh, well, no, I meant in Canada. It was the first time in Canada. because he tried to say that this movie was the first time that Steadicam had been used.
Right.
And it's like, nah, buddy. Like, Steadicam's pretty famous. And in horror movies, people know who used it first, and it ain't fucking George Mahalka.
No, it was in Halloween. Halloween was at least one of the first. Right?
Yeah, and it wasn't even the first movie. It was the first horror movie that used it. And then he also used, and so this is another thing with My Bloody Valentine. And this is not a knock on Mahalka or the movie. But he used things from the previous examples of this kind of movie. But everybody did. Like, every single slasher movie, with maybe a handful of exceptions, did the point of view, like the killer point of view thing that was there from Black Christmas, the very first one. You know,
I'll even beat you on that. The killer point of view was from all the way going back to 1960. They had it in Psycho, and they had it in its British counterpart, Peeping Tom had killer point of view, which Peeping Tom's considered to be one of the very first slashers. So
and that's true. Yet, you know, I don't ever really think about the 60s stuff because it's so far removed, you know what I mean, from when the genre actually takes off and becomes what it does through the 80s. But you're right. Yeah, there is the killer point of view in Psycho.
Yeah, I even had notes on that. Yeah, Psycho and Peeping Tom, both 1960, but a few months apart, and Peeping Tom predates Psycho. So, yeah.
Right, and at that time, you can't, when you get back to, like, 1960, there's no way those two movies even, like, realized they were existing.
Right. Different sides of the pond, as they say.
For sure. Lori Hollier played Sarah. She had lots of bad TV, but a long career. Like, she did a bunch of TV one-offs, which holds true for a bunch of this cast. She did 2 years on Days of Our Lives. She did 2 spots on Friday the 13th, the TV series, and she did the RoboCop TV series, which was awful, but man, it's cool that she was in it. Neil Affleck played Axel, no relation to Ben. He did fucking Scanners the same year as he did My Bloody Valentine. But his career took a way different arc than everybody else's. He stopped acting from 1987 to 2015. And he became an animator and an animation timer. And his work in animation includes Rocko's Modern Life, The Critic, King of the Hill, Rugrats, The Simpsons, and The Simpsons Movie. He also directed episodes of Family Guy, The Simpsons, and he's currently a director on Paw Patrol.
That's insane.
Yeah, that's such a weird career arc. And now he's also acting again, like a little bit, which I don't even know why the fuck you would. Like, if you've got a career in animation like this guy does, he must just like it. But he must have been like, oh, you know, I didn't do this for 2 decades. Let me hop back in.
The acting he's doing lately, it seems to be just more local Toronto type tiny productions.
For sure.
So yeah.
I think it's just stuff he's doing because he likes it.
Right.
He certainly wouldn't need the money. I
don't think so.
I think Simpsons probably pays okay.
A little bit.
Keith Knight played Hollis. He had a little bit of experience before My Bloody Valentine. He was in Meatballs.
Fuck yeah, he was.
He was also in the class of 1984. And like many people who after this went on to do some other work, he did voice work. He did voices on Care Bears, Beetlejuice cartoon, RoboCop cartoon, Tales from the Crypt Keeper. He worked as a voice actor and on screen in a bunch of stuff all the way up until his passing in 2007. There's a weird thing with him and the next guy we're going to talk about, Alf Humphreys, who played Howard, where they both died of like a brain cancer of some sort, which I'm sure is absolutely unrelated to both of them working on this together. But it's weird that 2 people who worked on this one weird movie that many years ago both kind of died of the same thing.
Yeah,
And-
like black lung or something would make sense, but yeah, brain doesn't add up.
Yeah. Well, so Alf was in fucking Rambo First Blood.
Fuck yeah.
He was in Ernest Rides Again, which is not one of the 3 things I will watch Ernest do.
Right.
I will watch Ernest go to camp.
Absolutely.
I will watch him get scared stupid, and I will watch him save Christmas. But I have no need to watch Ernest do any other things.
Oh, prison was fun too. Fuck you.
Oh, no, man. I don't need to see that. I don't need to see him in prison. I don't need to see Pauly Shore in prison.
I don't need to see him go to Africa. That's for sure. I
I
love Pauly Shore prison. Oh, I love that movie. Oh, it's one of my good ones.
Well, Alf Humphreys was also in Rumble in the Bronx, which is fucking amazing movie. He was in X-Men 2. He was in Air Bud Spikes Back. You a big fan of the Air Bud series?
Never seen one of them. Those came out just a little bit after I was a kid.
Oh man, you don't like Air Bud?
Nope.
X-Files?
Hell yeah.
Sliders? Outer Limits? He passed in 2018. Cynthia Dale, who played Patty, she had a big career in Canadian TV. Outside of Canada, she was just in really small TV stuff, but she was on a series called Street Legal that ran from 88 to 94, and she was in Moonstruck, but that's like her only big movie. Helene Udy, who played Sylvia, did a lot of TV, and lately she's done a lot of low-budget horror, but her big hit that she had was from 93 to 97. She was on Dr. Quinn Medicine Woman.
Okay. Which Young Ed's favorite wrestler was also on, I think, once. Brett. Good old Brett.
Oh, I was going to say the Boogeyman was on Dr. Quinn Medicine Woman.
No, Dan the Dad.
Oh, Jesus, man.
It looks like she's actually... Are they redoing Vampire?
Yeah, it's possible.
Might be bad, though. It doesn't have much. Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
Larry Reynolds, who played Mayor Hanniger, did a lot of TV. But the coolest TV that guy did was the Maniac Mansion TV series. Do you remember that existing?
Never.
Dude, it's awful and it rules. Like, it's based off the video games, right?
Okay.
But it takes place like 20 years after the video games. It's really bad in the best possible way. I don't know where you can find that to see it. I looked a little bit after I saw this credit because it sparked that back in my head of like, oh shit, yeah, there was the Maniac Mansion TV series. But man, if you can find it like bootlegged somewhere or on YouTube or wherever, like, dude, check out that TV series. It's bad in the best possible way.
Awesome. Jack
Van Erva played Happy the bartender.
He
did rule. And he had a tie-in to one of the other Pinnacle slasher movies. He was one of the search party members in Black Christmas. There's a good chance he may have got to do a bunch more, but unfortunately Jack passed in 1982, not long after making My Bloody Valentine.
Also, when he made My Bloody Valentine, that dude was 50. That dude looks like he's fucking 70.
Yeah.
He looks old as fuck. Like, he looks like 75 minimal. That dude went through some shit. Or he smoked all the cigarettes.
He may have
drank all that Moosehead.
The other actor in this movie is Don Franks, Chief Newbie. If this movie has a star, it is 100% Don. His acting career started in 1954. Jesus. But prior to that, he was a jazz musician. Back when that meant you were cool, not a stuffy prog dude. In the 60s, he does a lot of TV one-offs and like short runs. And then he played Mr. Anybody on the original Mr. Rogers from 64 to 67, and then from 68 to 70 on Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood.
So that means he was around in Pittsburgh, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Nice.
He was
one of the better actors for sure in the movie. I liked him, and you didn't hate him like you normally like could hate cops, but he wasn't a dick or anything.
Well, he's Canadian.
That's exactly what I was gonna say. That's what I was saying earlier. Yes.
So, in addition to being on Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, he was the voice of Boba Fett in the Star Wars Holiday Special and the Droids cartoon. He did 3 different voices in Heavy Metal. He was the voice of Dr. Claw on Inspector Gadget.
Oh, hell yeah.
And his daughter, Cree Summer, was Penny on Inspector Gadget.
Huh.
And she went on to do voices on Care Bears, Garbage Pail Kids, Real Ghostbusters. She was Elmira on Tiny Toons, and she played Freddy on A Different World. He also did voices on Care Bears, Garbage Pail Kids. He did voices on Tales from the Crypt Keeper, Captain Power, the Alf cartoon, Swamp Thing. He was Sabretooth in the X-Men cartoon. And he found his way back to TV screens in 1997 playing Walter on The Femme Nikita.
Ooh.
He was at Johnny Mnemonic, and in 2007, he was in that weird Bob Dylan movie, I'm Not There.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he played one of the hobos.
Oh, he didn't play Bob. He didn't have he wasn't that high on the bill.
No, I don't believe so, no. I've never seen that movie in its entirety. But... Yeah,
I just know that a lot of people act out as play Bob Dylan, and it's weird. That's all.
Yeah. That's I like art films, but that's not my kind of art film, you know. So his wife Lily was a member of the Plains Cree First Nation, and for a while he lived at the Red Pheasant Indian Reserve, and he's an honorary Cree. He was also an activist. He was a member of Greenpeace. He fought for Native rights, and he fought for the Free Tibet movement. And he passed in 2016. But Don Franks was bad motherfucker, man.
Yeah, dude fucking rules.
Yeah. So that's the cast. So we've got our cast together. And while the casting's going on, a few big changes start to happen with this film. At this point, the movie is not called My Bloody Valentine, but instead it's called The Secret. And not the shitty, this doesn't have anything to do with that stupid self-help nonsense that comes along later, the Secret.
Ugh.
This was based on the idea that, like, nobody knew who the killer was. And that went as far as, like, the cast not knowing who the actual killer was until they received the last 10 pages of the script.
Right.
Well, Cinepix cuts a deal with Paramount and Frank Mancuso to open this film on 1,200 screens as long as they can deliver it by Valentine's Day. That's a really quick turnaround.
Yeah, just a little bit.
I mean, figure, the ball on this has begun rolling in June of 1980. And, like, movies take a minute to happen. Like, you've got to shoot, you've got to edit. There's a lot that goes into it. This whole production goes from concept to finished product is done between June and February. It's really quick.
That's
especially for a group of people who hadn't made a lot of films.
Right.
So they get back to Nova Scotia and they begin turning Sydney mines into Valentine Bluffs. And they get a surprise.
Yes, they do.
In one of the most Canadian things I can imagine. The town cleaned up the mine for the movie.
Yeah.
They thought they were being nice. Like, they really, what they did was they set the production back about $50,000 to $75,000 because they had to make it look shitty again.
Yeah.
And George Mihalka, for as much as we talked about how he seems like kind of a shitty dude, he was like, how could we tell these people, man, you fucked us up?
Yeah.
They were so nice. He was like, we just went ahead and, did what we needed to do to it. But I would imagine like the people who cleaned that mine up, like 2 weeks later when they see them making it shitty again, we're like, oh, hey now, what's going on here? Why are they, well, fuck. But the town loved that the movie was happening there.
Right.
They really did. The local economy was in bad shape after the mining closed. It was really the only thing in town. So, being from where I'm from, I absolutely understand what it's like when the industry that your place is built on goes away, because that happened here. Like, we used to have steel and then we didn't. And then, just poverty and crime is mostly what we get.
Yeah.
So My Bloody Valentine meant business for restaurants, for hotels, car rental, and they were employing locals. Like, they hired locals as assistants on the movie. They needed painters and carpenters, and they needed people who were experienced with the mine.
Right, obviously.
So that brought in, a lot of work for that town for a small period of time, and they really embraced it. The shoot itself begins in mid-September of 1980, and it runs 7 weeks. Remember, this film has to be out by February.
Mm-hmm.
It's unbelievably short, and it's not an easy shoot. They're working in a real mine, and that came with some problems.
Yep.
They're 900 meters underground, 2,700 feet, and they're also 200 meters out under the ocean. So when they go down, that's the straight shaft down 2,700 feet.
Mm-hmm.
But then those mine cars, when they ride that out, that's literally going under the ocean floor.
Yeah, it's kind of like how the salt mines are in Cleveland.
Right. And one of the issues that come with that is air issues. 6 times during the shoot, they had a methane buildup and had to clear the mine. Methane's a thing that happens with coal mining. Getting people up and down for breaks took much longer than usual. So, like, if you have a crew that's going on a 45-minute lunch break, that's now a 3-hour lunch break.
Right.
Because you have to get everybody up out of the mine, then they go do their break, then you have to get everybody back under. There was also an issue with lighting.
Yeah.
So, as I said, methane, a byproduct of coal. It's why coal mines explode sometimes. It's also why there's the old canary in a coal mine thing. Where you send the canary down, the canary dies. That means that you need to blow off the gas that's in the mine. They couldn't use their normal equipment. They could only use safety lighting, which Ed is a photographer. I think you'll understand the ridiculousness of this, but they could only use 50-watt bulbs.
Yeah, no thank you.
That a 50-watt
it's almost
bulb,
like shooting at the collective, kind of.
a 50-watt bulb is like less than you probably have in the lamp in your house.
Yeah, I think I have like minimal 70s.
Right. Now, I mean, that's changed now with LEDs and shit,
right.
But like an old incandescent bulb, that's, usually you would have like a 75-watt bulb in the fixtures in your house.
Yeah, 60 minimal from what even like when you replace a bulb that they put in when you moved in kind of thing. Yeah.
Right. And so to offset that, they were trying to use the fastest film stock available, which will mean nothing to a lot of people, but it was 5247 film stock. They also needed to get lenses that would allow them to shoot incredibly fast too.
Which for that means that lens is going to be astronomically more expensive than what they were using before, because the lower what they call for film, it's a T-stop. The lower the T-stop, so the closer to zero the T-stop, the more expensive you're paying, because that's a higher technology. It's a more expensive technology.
Right, and they ended up, and I mean this holds true for most film productions, they ended up like renting the lenses that they needed.
Oh yeah, right.
But it was a scramble to get them.
to fucking Nova Scotia.
Right.
Not like Vancouver, like we were saying. Not like New York or LA. To fucking Nova Scotia and bumfuck Nova Scotia.
Correct. So another problem with bumfuck Nova Scotia is the only lab that could process the film was Chemtone in New York City. Mm-hmm. So the film would be sent from Nova Scotia to Montreal, then from Montreal to New York City. Then it would be processed, then sent back to Montreal, and then sent back to Nova Scotia. That meant that George wouldn't see rushes for a week. Oof. So they were flying blind. They had no clue if what they had shot for the previous week was good.
Yeah.
As I said earlier, George claimed that this was the first film to use a Steadicam. That's not true. However, I can't find anything that says differently than his claim that it was the first film to use a Steadicam in Canada.
Right.
So lighting is incredibly important. You as a photographer know how important that is. You've shot in some places where lighting sucks.
Yeah. I pretty much, if I'm shooting concerts, I'm mostly shooting in places where lighting sucks.
Right. But so the lighting and what they were able to do with it, I don't think can be understated in how they used that to make this film look cool.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's such a big factor in, like, the way this looks down in the mines and how, like, there are certain scenes where it almost feels like people appear out of nowhere, and it's totally because there's no exposure.
Right.
And I just think that's so fucking cool.
And you could see when they do have light, like upstairs, or, on the surface, in the party, or in the bar, or out on the street, their colorization is fucking amazing. The colors that they chose, like, to pop those pinks and reds, and everything. That's why I like this movie a lot. It just has that 80s feel, which is why everybody loves 80s horror movies. That movie just looks really fucking good, especially for all the shit that they went through. It looks great. And the grain isn't, like, on the copy that we watched from Shout Factory that came out a year ago, the grain is barely there, and it just looks the transfer looks so good for I think they did a 2K transfer or some shit like that. It looks so good. But yeah, the colorization and even like the 80s/70s feel of the yellows and the browns, it just looks so good and organic.
Well, I agree, and I think another thing that's great about this film that doesn't get mentioned enough in the stuff where I've seen people review it is, like you said, those colors do pop, and they pop on a background that's very muted and gray, yes. And things are very, like, there's water everywhere, and they, like, the lighting let them avoid weird reflections with that water too, but, like, there's puddles, there's everything's wet and gray and dreary, and then there's all of these splashes of color on top of it, and it just looks really fucking cool.
Yes.
And they used a lot of smoke and stuff too, so much so that, like, when they're shooting, this is a story that I think this speaks to George Mihalka being maybe a pervert and absolutely a dickhead, but it also takes what is a miserable shoot for a film and makes it more miserable for a bunch of your cast. So there's the shower scene, right?
Mm-hmm.
That shower scene is shot waist up, right?
Right.
You don't see anything below the waist.
Nope.
You would assume everybody's wearing, like, a fucking swimsuit bottoms or a towel or whatever, right?
Yeah.
No, they're all buck-ass fucking naked because George Mihalka said that's how it would really be in a mine. I guess nobody told George Mihalka that it's a fucking movie. Number two, that shower scene, like, there's all the smoke and the steam rising up, right?
Yeah.
So it's warm, right?
Yeah?
No, it's
not at all.
Shit. It's cold as shit. That was like fucking 35-degree water, like just above fucking freezing water. And they brought smoke machines in to make it look like it was warm.
Oh, how could you clean on like how? I just don't. Ugh, it's nuts. I don't understand why unless maybe they didn't have a water heater. Like how would like
Oh,
in an actual
that was totally it. They didn't have
Okay.
hot water.
That makes sense.
But like it's like, why make shit more miserable for people? I don't know.
Yeah.
George Maholka, not the nicest dude. Somebody who's a much nicer dude and a fucking cool as shit dude is the special effects guy, Tom Berman. And now we get into the part of the movie where, man, this is both amazing and tragic. So, depending on which version of this movie you've seen, you might not realize how good Tom Berman is at his job.
Yep.
Tom started his career as an assistant on Planet of the Apes. He did Frogs, which is not a great movie. He did Phantom of the Paradise, which is a fucking amazing movie. He did Invasion of the Body Snatchers. He did Halloween 3. He created Sloth for the Goonies.
Fuck yes.
He did Teen Wolf. He did Scrooged. He did Die Hard 2 with that fucking icicle through the eye.
Yep.
He did the Young Indiana Jones Chronicles, which is the best Indiana Jones shit that ever existed.
I watched that all the time as a kid.
And in recent years, while it's not horror related, he's done Nip Tuck and Grey's Anatomy, which both have gore effects on network TV that are far worse than some of what the MPAA gives him shit for in this movie.
Yeah, but it has to do with it's all medical, man.
Yeah, whatever. Part of it is the MPAA doesn't have shit to do with television.
Yeah, that whole M in it kind of fucks them over, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Tom at the time had his own production studio, and at that time, other luminaries in the field like Rick Baker and Stan Winston did not yet. And so all of the special effects, like these actors in that time period in between casting and when they end up in Nova Scotia, get flown out to LA to get body casts done and stuff for different special effects. They had just handled a movie with or a video of David Bowie's right before this. And a bunch of the actors talked about how that was what they were told when they went in, was like, oh, you guys just missed David Bowie. He was just in here before you guys. And one of the issues was Canada didn't have a lot of makeup effects artists. It wasn't a thing that was there. So they had to bring people in. There wasn't anybody in Canada who really knew what they were doing at that level.
That's kind of nuts seeing that Cronenberg. I mean, I would assume Cronenberg shot like a lot of stuff in Canada because I know his son. I know we were talking off air, but Possessor, his son's new movie, was shot in Toronto for sure. So I'm surprised that there isn't some kind of like little bit of a field there where, but maybe it was just the late 70s, early 80s, and that was just how it was.
Well, that's it, man. I mean, Canada was not the place that it is now.
Right.
You know, you're looking at a different time period. You're looking at 1980s, 40 years ago.
Right.
So the film industry in Canada wasn't what it is. And so by that, the things that go along with the film industry wasn't there. So when Cronenberg is shooting things back then, he's bringing people in much in the same way George Maholka had to do for this.
Mm-hmm.
So because he had the studio that he had to do things, another thing with special effects is it's not like there's some like rule book. Like you kind of make this shit up as you go.
Right.
And most special effects are done, you know, by a certain way. And the people who really stand out, the people who move up, the people whose names you remember in the world of special effects are people who end up in one way or another innovating. And Tom did that with this movie in that because of the time constraints they had and the budget issues that they knew they were facing, he ended up creating a lot of one-shot special effects, which is crazy. Traditionally, if you're doing a special effect, there are cuts that in the effect let you piece together different shots to build the illusion. In My Bloody Valentine, many of the things that happen in one shot on camera, which makes what they go through with the MPAA that much more tragic.
Yeah. Cut.
So let's talk about the MPAA for a minute.
Assholes.
Fuck them. That's my opinion of the MPAA. So prior to these assholes telling people what was dirty, there was the Hays Code, which was established in 1930. And it was restrictive, for sure.
Oh, just a little bit.
But the MPA, as it was originally known, was a trade association with a focus on public relations to ensure Hollywood remained financially stable and to attract investors. Part of this was ensuring a clean moral tone. It established a code of conduct for actors' behavior off-screen, and it had a goal of having studios avoid racist portrayals of foreigners, which it failed at historically.
Yeah, it did.
Ironically, it also spoke out against censorship. In 1945, Eric Johnston rebrands it to the MPAA. He loosens previous restrictions on drug use and abortion in film, but adds blasphemy to its restrictions. Well, Eric dies of a stroke, and that opens the door for Jack Valenti, a former aide to Lyndon B. Johnson. That sigh is correct. Jack replaced the Hays Code with a voluntary system of ratings in 1968 in order to limit censorship and provide parents with information. Sounds pretty fucking good, right?
Nah.
Well, here's the thing. Theaters began to refuse films without a rating. So if you didn't have a G, a PG, or an R on your film, it wasn't shown. If you had an X, you were doomed to the porno theater. And an NR was just as bad or worse than having an X. This gave the MPAA power, and much like the line in Spider-Man, with it comes great responsibility. And the MPAA were failures at that. If you have never watched it, I strongly fucking encourage you to watch This Film Is Not Yet Rated. And be prepared to be angry. Well, the good folks over at the MPAA, upon first watch of My Bloody Valentine, gave it an X. A quote that George Mahalka attributes to Jack Valenti goes like this: "Tell those Canadians to take their movie and go home. This gets an X." So that meant that a bunch of amazing work done by Tom was doomed to the cutting room floor. They butchered the fuck out of this movie.
Yes, they did.
So much so that the first time I saw this movie, I thought it was weird that it had so little gore in it. Like, I had no clue in, 80s, 90s, the backstory of what had happened with this. I just knew that this movie seemed like it was a little weak,
But also, on the other hand, your favorite movie of all time, Texas Chainsaw, and there's no gore in that.
There's gore in that.
There's no blood in it, sorry.
There's blood in that.
But I mean, everybody thinks that, like, when she gets put on the hook, like, that you see shit, and it's just theater of the mind. So, that's what I'm saying.
Sure, and truly, that's kind of what I thought this was going for. But there's also...
But they weren't going for it, that's the thing.
Right, and so that's the difference. In Chainsaw, not to get philosophical about Texas Chainsaw, but, like, there's an art to it, and you could tell that when you're watching it, you could tell there was never an intention for there to be something different.
Right. Go full Joe Bob out on Chainsaw. I'm all for it.
No. I have specifically stayed off Chainsaw because one day I'm going to do that, and it'll be like a fucking 3-parter.
I can't fucking wait. Inject that into my veins like the vaccine.
Everybody go get that vaccine. But the thing with My Bloody Valentine was you could tell that there was something missing. Like when you watched it, you could tell like nobody who took the time to make the rest of this film look this nice made that cut look that bad.
Yeah.
You know, it just, things didn't add up when you were watching it. Thankfully, now there is a close to the original version available, and it really shows off how good the effects were. There are some standouts, man. The pickaxe through the eye to Happy, and then him being dragged afterwards.
Oh,
Dude,
so good.
It's so good because it all takes place in one shot. Like the spike coming up under the chin and then it forcing the fucking eyeball out through the head. Oh, it looks so fucking good.
It's so fucking good. Like, it's too good for fucking 1980.
It really is. Like the job they did on the life casts for this movie, the head mold for him, the body mold for the next thing we're going to talk about, which is where Sylvia's head is impaled on that shower, and then he turns on the spigot and the water comes out through her mouth.
Yeah.
That looks so fucking good.
Yeah.
Like, and he stays on it just long enough that as you start to notice, like, oh shit, maybe that's a prop. Oh, you're off that shot.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's like the blend of how good the effects are matched with George Mahalka and the way he shot it and the way it's edited. Oh man, it's just, there's a lot of good that goes into all that stuff. The scene where the fucking old lady's in the laundromat.
Oh, I took notes on that one too. Yeah.
Dude, the cut is weak. The cut is so weak, but the original with the body just flopping.
Oh, it's so good. And it looks like it's all burned up like Freddy Krueger. It's so good.
Oh yeah, dude. And like the way the neck flops, like every time the body goes around the circle, the neck flops once. It's so good.
Yeah.
But like everything was cut, man. Like every scene had shit cut. The boiled hot dog face, which the coolness of that effect in the real version where the makeup was designed to like dissolve off in pieces.
Mm-hmm.
So it looks like his face is actually boiling. Is really fucking cool. The nail gun.
I was going to ask you with the boiling hot dog. I'm like, do you miss Monsoon Classics boiled hot dogs at AIW?
I do not eat a boiled hot dog.
Oh, that's how my grandpa used to make them. It's good shit.
That's how my mom used to make them when I was a kid. That's why I don't eat boiled hot dogs. No, that's not how you do a hot dog. The fucking nail gun, like that shit looks great.
Mm-hmm.
The biggest tragedy is the nail gun through the drill through two people.
Right.
Like the way that scene was originally supposed to be. And to hear George Mahalka explain the way that shot was originally, and the fact that all of it's not there anymore, like that it's one of the casualties,
yeah,
is a bummer. Like that scene is so good, and that scene is totally lifted later on by other slasher movies, including like later Friday the 13th chapters.
I mean, was it? No, it was in part 1, right? Was it when they were in the bed?
Well, that would have already existed.
Okay, that's what I was going to ask. Yeah, I don't remember what year. So, what year did the first Friday come out? 80.
We're gonna go there, but yeah, okay. It's okay. 80 because cool. There's a timeline to all this too. But yeah, that scene is kind of lifted later on and done a lot gorier in other movies. Mm-hmm. But so there's all this gore. It's all fucking great. Like literally every kill in this movie has an extended version of the kill. Even little things like the one girl getting the pickaxe to the stomach. There's like a longer cut of it where she just like reacts to it more. It's not really more gory, but she reacts to it more.
Mm-hmm.
But so they're up against this release date, right? And with that in mind and the millions invested, Paramount and Cinepix bend the fucking knee to Jack. They end up working 24 hours a day making cuts to this movie.
Cowards.
Four frames here, 8 frames there. I mean, you can say cowards, man, but at some point, like, the movie has to come out, right?
Right.
Like, they can't just fucking abandon this thing, right?
Yeah.
So it gets ridiculous. There came a point when the MPAA said to cut something, and they had to explain there were literally no frames left to cut. It was just the sound.
Right.
Burbank Editorial did the sound for the movie, and they did the premixes. And that is a testament to how fucking good they were. Because their sound was making the folks at the MPAA go, oh no, you need to cut more out of this. When there was nothing left. Now, this shit is happening in January of 1981.
Right.
This movie has to be delivered by February 5th.
That means printing all the reels, too.
Right, that's what I'm saying. The final cut of the film has to be the final day it can be turned in and get all the prints made and delivered to the theaters for this to be able to debut. Has to be done by February 5th.
That's nuts.
No other films that year were hit half as hard as My Bloody Valentine was, and there's no real reason why. Some people suspected that it was the title. Some people suspected that it was the fact that they were Canadian.
Right.
And there was some sort of gripe there, especially based on Jack Valenti's fucking quote. That son of a bitch. George Mahalka seems to think it was because John Lennon was murdered in December, and that was still fresh.
I mean, that's like some kind of killings is one of the reasons why New Mutants was held out for like a year and a half, and then The Hunt was held off because of 1%ers or some 1%, top 10, some bullshit like that too. So it's not the first time, and it won't be the last, unfortunately.
Right, and whatever the reason was, the cuts really hurt the fucking movie.
Oh, yeah.
So, after their lengthy battle with the MPAA, My Bloody Valentine gets released on February 11th, 1981. And it eventually makes $5,672,000 in theaters. And I fully believe that would have been way fucking higher had the movie not been butchered. Like,
right.
The crowd who's going to see My Bloody Valentine.
Yeah, instead they saw My Valentine.
Yeah. There's some blood, but like the crowd for this movie wanted to see gore. They wanted to see special effects. They wanted to see violence. And, predictably, a lot of critics were not kind to the movie either. Gene Siskel hated it. Go figure. Yeah, and a lot of Canadian reviewers were upset because it had used funds from the Canadian Film Development Corporation to make the film, Canadian tax dollars.
Yeah, I was going to ask you questions on something about that whole thing. So, did they... How much money were they getting? Like, how much of their budget were they getting from that kind of a thing? And I know that's okay. And I know that that's not a thing, that hasn't been a thing for a while now, right?
Well, yeah, it's different. So, like, in Canada for a long time, the arts were funded really well.
As they should fucking be.
Right, and it's that way it's that way in Europe some too. So, like, there are a lot of bands that existed because of the Canadian arts development programs.
I know that there's a lot of metal bands that come over from Europe, and they're funded by that kind of shit.
Yeah, in Scandinavia, like a lot of black metal bands and death metal bands and stuff like that have been funded by the governments of their country
awesome.
Yeah, because they're able to apply for these arts grants. And, we're the richest country in the world, but we don't do that shit, right? Because fuck arts. Who needs those? But in Canada, they worried about it back then. And so there were a lot of things that happened where, if you were a Canadian band, if you were a Canadian artist who was trying to make television or film, there were funds available for you to be able to do that with.
Mm-hmm.
And in general, nobody made like really controversial shit with it. But, you know, My Bloody Valentine being an exception. So it's not a bad grift. You know what I mean? Like there are way shittier ways to go about getting a film made. Now, as time went on and Vancouver became a base for Hollywood to make films, when people started to realize, oh, you can kind of make Vancouver look like pretty much any city you need it to. And Toronto also started to become a hub, and Montreal in ways had always been a little bit of a hub, which is why Cinepix was based out of there, mostly because they were able to make French language stuff.
Right.
So there were really only two places in the world making French language. It was Montreal or Paris, right? So there was always a little bit of a market there, but that was not, again, making shit like horror films usually. But yeah, that as Hollywood came to Canada, and with the Canadian dollar being the exchange to the Canadian dollar versus the American dollar being what it was at a certain time through the late 90s and into the 2000s, Canada kind of relaxed those tax dollars to Canadians and started allowing like tax breaks, much in the way states do here and cities do here, to get film to come in. Like Georgia made a big push like that, to where there's a ton, and you can kind of see what that's done too, which is interesting. As
every fucking thing has a Georgia peach at the end of their goddamn credits now.
It does. And what's interesting is, and not to make this a political show, because it's definitely not, and whatever your political beliefs are, bless you, it's interesting that as Georgia has opened up to the arts and brought in more arts, all of a sudden Georgia is a blue state.
Right.
So there's something to be said for that. But in Canada, it was very much, you know, a business thing where, hey, we can get these American dollars to come in and kind of add to the Canadian coffers instead of doing like this film tax abatement stuff. And I'm sure there are still things now for artists in Canada, ways to do stuff. I'm not the authority on that by any means.
Actually, even going back to so one of the reasons I went to my first what is it called? God damn it, brain farting. Sorry, the Cinema Wasteland, which had the cast as best they could of My Bloody Valentine, and the asshole director were there. And I sat there for the panel and everything, and he actually talked a lot about this whole tax credit stuff, and it was really interesting. And then said how it's not really that much of a thing anymore. Probably more along the lines of how, like, the Avengers got tax credit for shooting in Cleveland, kind of thing. Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, I think it is too. I mean, there's a lot of ways that movies get funded, and I don't think government making tax dollars available for the arts is a bad idea.
No. And one of the things I heard recently on a podcast that was very interesting is always go to like a fucking dentist or a doctor and try to get backing through them, because they're always just down to like put that into movies. Like that was some director said, like, do that because they give out money a lot.
Well, that was the Sam Raimi system.
It might have even been Bruce Campbell talking about it on the original Table for Three or Table for Five from IFC or something that I was watching on YouTube from like 15 years ago. That might have been it. That would make sense.
Yeah, that was how Sam Raimi did Evil Dead.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. Was
dentists' money, because traditionally dentists had a lot of money and didn't really have a lot of shit to do with them.
Right.
You know, if you've been a dentist for a while and you have a bunch of money, you keep making a bunch of money and you kind of run out of shit to buy eventually, right?
Yeah, they said somebody, like, the dentist didn't go to Vegas that year or something, so he was like, fuck it, here's money.
Yeah.
I'll bankroll a part of your film.
Yeah, man, and I could tell you, as someone who's tried to raise funds for independent film, it's not easy. So, like, if my friends and I had a way to use tax dollars instead of, like, begging, that would have been great. I would have been all over that shit. I would have taken some tax dollars to make a film.
Absolutely.
So this film, its theater release was what it was. I mean, it made money, right? So, like, it made about $3 million over what its cost was. But for Paramount and for Frank Mancuso, they looked at that as a little bit of a disappointment, which I get, because it didn't make what Friday the 13th had made. But the timeline with that shit is pretty wild. Like, so Friday the 13th comes out in May of 1980.
Okay.
This movie started pre-production in June.
Okay.
So Friday the 13th has been out a month and a half.
Right.
And the ball's rolling on My Bloody Valentine. It starts shooting in September. Well, Friday the 13th Part 2 is shooting in October. And it comes out in May.
Sean Cunningham is like, yep, let's get this shit rolling, right?
Right, and that's all Frank Mancuso stuff.
Okay, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, so Frank Mancuso has this coming out as a February film. He has the sequel to Friday the 13th coming out in May. And Harvey Weinstein has The Burning shooting in August.
Okay.
Of 80. So all of these fucking slasher films are happening around the same time. And you've got Halloween 2 being made around then too. So, like, I think all of that's kind of fascinating that you have all of this shit happening at kind of the same time.
It's nice because usually when, like, that bum rush of this movie was a hit, so then we're going to do all these movies that are kind of like that. Usually that second wave fucking sucks. And you just named a lot of pretty fucking good slashers.
Right. Well, and that's the thing is in the first wave, like, I would say up through 84, 85. While there are a bunch of slashers that kind of hit out of nowhere, I think there's some quality to all of them. Like, I would say all the way up through Final Chapter.
Okay.
All those Friday the 13ths are quality. There's shit like, there's other movies that like The Burning fucked up Madman a little bit. Okay. Because they were both kind of based on Cropsy. That's a totally different thing to get into. But like there's a lot of shit like that. But like this time frame of how quickly all these movies are like being made and coming out and in production and lined up. And like My Bloody Valentine even kind of has a throw to Friday the 13th in it where like, oh, it starts on Thursday the 12th.
Right.
And then Friday the 13th happens in between that and Valentine's Day.
I didn't even catch that. That's awesome.
Yeah. So like they were all definitely playing off each other and it was all kind of a cash grab of like, this was successful, so let's do this, which is a thing that later on, like when that kind of shit starts happening in the 90s, as I'm really into films like and a young adult, I'm like, oh man, fuck that shit. It's all just copies. But then looking back, the shit that I really liked was doing the same thing.
Exactly.
So, I think maybe sometimes you're a little, for me at least, I was maybe a little more critical of shit than I should have been at different times looking back on it, Like, that's why I'm able to look back. I love doing this and going back and looking at some films sometimes where I was like, oh man, I thought that was a big piece of shit. It's actually all right. And then there's other things that I thought were great that I'm like, oh man, that was kind of a big piece of shit. So this movie in theaters made what it made, but its real legacy kind of hit when it hit the video stores, right? Like, so it's on VHS and Laserdisc in the 80s. It's on video store shelves. It finally finds its way to DVD in 2002 when Paramount released it and claimed that they didn't have any uncut footage to add to it, which, you know what, they might not have had any. But when Lionsgate gets their hands on it, when they make the remake, which I let's talk about remakes for a second.
Mm-hmm.
How do you feel about remakes?
I mean, I think in my Twitter bio it says I watch a lot of movies and I tend to like them more so than don't like them, and that goes with remakes. I mean, I own a lot of the horror remakes, and I tend to like them for the most part. Even the My Bloody Valentine. I mean, I saw this movie after the remake had already happened, and I saw the original one first, but my friends hold up that My Bloody Valentine 3D as one of the best remakes. So
it's not a bad remake.
Yeah.
I think
it loses some of the heart of this one, but that's 1980 versus 2012 or something like that. So
yeah, and so you're always going to lose a little bit of that. I think a big thing is when you look back through, remakes have always been there.
Mm-hmm.
There have always been remakes. Things have always gotten rebooted or remade. Just a lot of times it wasn't as high profile as what it is now. Or, prior to home video, people just forgot shit existed.
Right.
Like, things happened in the theater and then those movies just went away. So you could, remake things or rediscover things.
I mean, there were remakes in the 40s and 50s of movies from the 20s and 30s. So yeah, it's always happened.
There were talkie remakes of silent films.
Exactly.
So
I mean, Hitchcock literally remade his own movies, two or three of them.
He's allowed.
Yeah.
Other people remaking his movies probably not a good idea. I guess that's a big thing for me. Is like, if a movie was good, which I think My Bloody Valentine was,
mm-hmm.
I don't know that it needs remade. Okay. I always come back to like the idea of The Hills Have Eyes. I like the original Hills Have Eyes.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was a good movie. It's not a great movie. It's a good movie. It's basically Texas Chainsaw in the desert.
Right.
However, I think the remake's fantastic.
Who did the remake again?
Alexandre Aja, who made High Tension.
Right, which I love.
So do I. And one of the reasons he made that movie, why he made the choice to do it, was he had made High Tension and he was kind of given the option of like, what would you like to do? And he saw that Hills Have Eyes was on a list of things that were up for being remade, and it was his favorite film.
Mm-hmm.
And he was like, man, I can't let somebody else fuck this up. So he went into it with a passion to make that film good. And I think the difference is a lot of people used remakes as like, I'll boost my career by making this remake, as opposed to like having a real passion to redo that film.
Right.
And I think it shows. I think there's been cool shit in some remakes. This one, I'll give My Bloody Valentine 3D the rub of, without it, we might have never got the uncut version of this movie.
Right.
Because Lionsgate, when they acquired the rights, they released that original special edition in 2009 that added the lost footage back in. And then the Shout Factory restoral went from the original negatives in every spot that they could, and that's why it looks so fucking good. And that's 100% the way this movie should be seen.
Right.
Like,
and that's even something that I literally, that's why I'm bummed. Like, they were shooting video of the panel that I was at, and I saw that there was going to be a panel on this Blu-ray, and I'm like, oh shit, I might be at a fucking Shout Factory movie in a way. Especially because I asked a question saying, hey, I can't get my hands on the first Blu-ray that was put out. I would love to see Shout Factory or Arrow put it out. Good old George said, I doubt that that's going to happen. We've already done a Blu-ray. Once again, George is an asshole. I actually talked to him at his table when it was just like him at the table, and I was bullshitting. I didn't even buy anything from him. But
so you were just bothering him?
Yeah, I mean, I'm making him on board, like what's his name? God damn it, Pittsburgh dude, the big Pittsburgh makeup guy.
Tom Savini?
Yeah, like Savini is over in his corner because his stuff's overpriced and he's an asshole.
Man, I'm glad you said it. I've already said my piece on Savini.
You've said it before, and I've come off that way just by watching him on special features. I've like, you're kind of a dick. But yeah, I was like, oh, I'd really love it to come out that way. And he even later on, a few months later, he went on to the podcast that I really fucking loved and got me really, really deep into horror was Shockwaves. He went on to there and said, oh yeah, all that footage was lost. So then Shout Factory, like we've discussed before, are just amazing detectives and hunters to find this fucking footage. And it made a whole big difference. And especially there's barely any scenes where you can tell that it was like a lesser quality. Like there's one scene where it shows Hollis that I noticed was like a little bit off, but otherwise everything looks fucking great.
Right, that clip, I know the exact one you're talking about, and they just used what was there from the 2009 version, right? Because they couldn't find the negatives. But like this version looks so fucking good, and like
and I've seen other versions other movies where they clipped in like the alt scenes or like the non-restored scenes or scenes without CG into movies, and it looks like you're like, oh, go from this high def to almost VHS quality, and this you don't have that. It looks pure all the way through.
It's true, it really does. And like I don't do plugs or sponsorships on this show, so like just know that if I'm saying like this Shout Factory version's good, nobody paid me anything to say it. Nope. It's just fucking good. And like if you're broke and you want to see this movie and you don't want to pay Shout Factory, totally get it. This shit's on Amazon Prime right now, but be warned, it's the cut to shit version.
Yeah. And it's not going to look as nearly as good. It's not going to be the restoration either.
No, it's an HD broadcast of it, but it's not.
It's HD in the fact that it's probably 720 is considered HD instead of 1080p too.
Right. It's upscaled basically.
Yeah.
Is all it is. But however you see it, I recommend watching this movie if you haven't. This movie has a huge legacy. Like, I think Harry Warden, like that image of the coal miner, is such an iconic fucking horror figure, man. Like,
absolutely.
That miner's suit, like the look of that miner's suit as a villain is both very Scooby-Doo and also super fucking creepy. You know?
Yes.
Like, it looks so fucking cool. And it's so different than the other shit that was around then. But the movie's not without its errors, right? Like, you gave me shit because at the beginning of this because I gave it 3 stars. Well, man, like 3 stars ain't bad.
Right.
3 stars doesn't mean that it was a piece of shit. There's problems with the movie though. Like, so here's an example. How did he kill that old lady at the laundromat and also be at the junkyard playing a harmonica at the same time?
Right.
You know, like it doesn't time up.
Right. But that's also stuff that's normal to horror movies. It's like WWE, they hire a continuity editor, but it's never checked.
Right. Dude, something I noticed in watching this cut of it, that dog almost gets blasted by the fucking by the sheriff's truck. Like when they're driving down the road and the mayor opens the fucking candy box and there's the heart inside and they back up and turn around. Man, that dog chases them down the road and he almost gets blasted. That would have been like the saddest fucking moment in this whole movie.
Oh, I back to the miner really quick. Just the practicality of it. You're covered up. He can breathe at any time. You get to hear the breathing really well. The pickaxe is just an amazing fucking tool. Also, it's weird that that My Bloody Valentine and the movie The Prowler both came out in 81, kind of the same vibes on the gimmick of their serial killer.
Yeah, that's true.
And I think The Prowler is also good. That was one that I discovered through an early Joe Bob screening, or one of his early Shudder streams.
You know, I think Joe Bob's done this movie before, and I've never watched his thing for it.
I'll tell you this, he hasn't done it since going on Shudder. I know that because that's only when I discovered him. But
there's one coming up for
yep,
Valentine's Day, so I'm sure it's part of it.
February 12th. So I really hope that it is, because I'll just sit there and watch it again, even though I just watched it yesterday. I'll definitely watch it if he does it. So
here's something I noticed in this: they play the knife game.
Yes, I brought that up too.
Is this the first time that's shown on film? Because Aliens is 1986.
Okay. Huh. Yeah, could be.
So did that get lifted from this? Is that how that worked?
Right. My thing that I wrote about the knife game is like, it was a whole thing about that I was writing during the bar scene. A bunch of tough miners playing the knife game. I'm like, it makes total sense. Like, that's nothing compared to what the shit that they go down in the mine. Like, that's why I like that they're playing the knife game. And yeah, it being that old, shot on film. Yeah, I wonder if it is the first time that was done. It's great.
Yeah, I think it would have to be. I mean, I don't know that to be a fact. I don't know it to be 100% true, but I know it predates Aliens, and Aliens is what made that super fucking famous. So I feel like James Cameron may have fucking seen this movie and been like,
yeah,
right. I'll lift that little piece. Like, right. That can be a cool thing. I also, man, I think one of the other things with this movie is Harry Warden, in a way, is a very sympathetic character, in that, like, he was totally justified in murdering those supervisors.
Right.
You know, like, he comes back and he kills those two dudes, and that's totally justified. Now, the rest of the terroristic shit that ends up actually being, you know, spoilers, it's fucking Axel.
Right.
That's
what I wrote that down too. I'm like, it's so fucking on the head that Axel is the guy the whole time. I love it. It's so cheesy and hilarious.
Oh man, but the thing is, like, they definitely try to get you to believe that it's somebody else.
Oh yeah, they put a lot of red herrings out.
Like, when he lifts the girl when they get home, like, they get to the union hall from work the one day, or the bar from work, and he picks that girl up by her head. Like, when they all show up and, like, their girlfriends are there.
Yeah.
And then there's the scene later where when the Harry Warden killer picks her up and puts her head through the fucking shower post.
Right.
And it's the same way. And I mean, yeah, it delivers right after that because he shows up and you know it's not him. Yeah. But there's a bunch of little things like that where there's a carryover where they want the audience to believe, like, oh, it could be this guy, but it's not. It's this other guy. And you don't really know. You know what I mean? Like, so I think that was successful and cool through the whole thing. Another thing this did was it was the namesake to maybe the most famous shoegaze band ever.
Yeah.
Ed, I'm guessing you're not a fan of My Bloody Valentine.
No, I like My Bloody Valentine. That's good shit. Like, all that shit, like that shoegaze that, I mean, it came back recently, the last decade or so, and that all, like, also kind of melds in with, like, the Pelicans and that kind of, and ISIS and not the terrorist groups and all that kind of shit. So I do like shoegaze. I
like that you referred to Pelican as the Pelicans, like it's like a 50s rock group. Like,
I was gonna go with the Pelicans, the ISIS, yeah, like that kind of thing. You dick. Yeah, they're a doo-wop band, not a.
I love the Pelicans. They're great.
Yes.
And you know what, man? The score of the movie is good too. Like, Paul Zaza did a really good job with the score, and there's that weird fucking song at the end.
Oh,
That's like the story of My Bloody
the
Valentine.
Ballad of Harry Warden. I wrote that down. I'm like, that's has to be like one of the best fucking songs written for a movie ever. It's so cheesy and so good and on point, and especially that it wraps it up. Like, I would have almost liked it they would have teased it somehow in the movie, at least even just the riff. Like they do in a lot of movies and stuff where they have like the theme of the killer or whatever. But no, that ballad fucking rules.
Yeah, dude. And Paul Zaza, like, he did like other big movie scores. Like, he's a legitimate Hollywood guy. Like, he did Prom Night in 1980, which, I mean, he did all the prom nights. He did Prom Night 2, Hello Mary Lou. He did 3, he did 4. Like, I guess you do one of those and they just keep bringing you back.
I tried watching the first Prom Night and it just looked like dog shit. And I couldn't do it.
Prom Night 2 is a better movie.
That's what I always gather, and I think Joe Bob covered it, so I do need to watch it at some time. But I was like, God damn, it's Jamie Lee Curtis, and it has a fun concept, and I'm like, sweet. And then I started watching, it just looked like it was shot on video, and I'm like, I can't do this.
Oh man, there's something to be said for shot on video. I like some shot on video stuff.
Right? Yeah.
But he did Zaza did Porky's. He did A Christmas Story.
So he was all in with Bob Clark.
Yeah. He was Bob Clark's dude, which makes sense because Bob Clark shot in Canada.
Right. I wonder if George lifted him because of Black Christmas.
He didn't do Black Christmas.
Okay, but he had that whole relationship. I guess. Huh.
He didn't have a relationship prior to Porky's.
Okay.
With Bob Clark. So it was like the same year. Like, he did My Bloody Valentine and Porky's around the same time.
Okay.
And he also did Popcorn, which is a fucking, some people like that movie. I'm not big on that, but
that was highly raved about on Shockwaves, and I actually picked up like the super version of it, and I like it. I have fun with it.
But yeah, man, that song, the fucking
Ballad of Harry Warden.
The Ballad of Harry Warden, man, is it's something. What do you have any other thoughts on this movie, man? Anything else that you want to throw out about it?
Yeah, I still have a few things on my list. I just like that it carries the holiday thing. So like, Black Christmas was the first holiday horror movie, right?
Yeah,
74, I think.
Yep, 1974.
So then Halloween happens because Bob Clark once said if you're going to do another one, it would be a Halloween, and then that's disputed amongst Carpenter and Bob Clark and George a little bit. So then you have like Halloween, and then My Bloody Valentine, and April Fool's is also a really fun one.
Well, Friday the 13th in between.
True, but that's not a holiday. That's just a day that's known, I think.
It's sort of. I mean, it's as much of a holiday as like April Fool's Day. Like,
that's true. That's true.
People make a big deal about, oh shit, it's Friday the 13th.
Right.
You know, like it doesn't exist because of the movies. Like, it was a superstitious thing prior.
True. Another thing, I just love the characters, as we were saying. Maybe it's because they're Canadian, but you don't like. Nowadays, I hate people in movies. Like, I can't stand a lot of people, even if they're not supposed to be hated. Like, hell, in Cobra Kai, I don't like LaRusso's daughter. She just sucks. She sucks. The actress sucks. It's the only bad thing about the whole series. But yeah, these actors, it just seems fun. I love that it's called Valentine's Bluff. It's so fucking corny. So awesome.
Dude, it's so corny, and like, but it's so corny, it's good. Like,
exactly.
That sign rules. Like, that town sign is so fucking shitty and amazing. And like, the whole town being done up for Valentine's Day, everything looks genuine.
Yes,
like
absolutely.
It doesn't look like a movie came in and did a town up for Valentine's Day. Right. It looks like a town looks when like some shop owners are like, I'll put up some fucking Valentine's decorations. Right.
It's the perfect type of kitschy.
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely. It all looks organic. Everything looks like it wasn't contrived.
Yes, I love all the old curmudgeon dudes. Those all the like we said, the police chief rules. The mayor rules. The fucking bartender is fucking excellent.
Oh my god, that bartender is every crotchety old dude you knew when you were a kid.
Yes.
Who would be like, "Oh, you kids, you're gonna go mess around and you're gonna find out." Like, it's and so good.
Even when he's like fucking around up at the mine and he's like wearing the miner suit, and then he's like puts the like, why would you set up even if the miner didn't, spoiler, the miner didn't come out and kill you, why would you set that pickaxe gimmick up like that? Because and then keep on open the door, like you're gonna
because he loves it, man. He's tipsy and he's like,
he's like smacking down that whiskey or whatever, and then it's like that's just gonna come and get you. Oh wait, no, the miner's gonna fucking get you, you fucking old fuck. That's so awesome. Also, did they say if the cast hung out before production?
So a few of the people in the cast were in Pickup Summer.
Yeah, I was gonna mention that. Yeah.
So some of them did know each other, and there were some of them who were friends, and others that weren't. So it was kind of a mixed bag with that.
But those friendships seem authentic, and that's another reason why I really like this movie. And also, they're not teenagers, as we said earlier. They're like probably early to mid 20s.
Yeah, I would say they're all probably like 22 to 25.
Right. And it's just you want to fucking hang out with Hollis. Don't tell me you don't. Hollis,
yeah, dude. Cool. I'll hang out in a junkyard with that dude while he cooks some food on a fucking car engine.
The only one that I didn't feel like that I didn't really like was TJ. He just seemed like he was kind of a chode, but that's also he's playing up the fact that he was gone and now he's back and his girl's not with him and all that kind of stuff.
Man, the only scene in that whole movie that seems a little contrived. The only one where I'm like, oh man, that doesn't seem as genuine as the rest of this is when they fucking dual harmonicas.
Oh, okay. I thought you were going to say when they go out to the Bluffs and they like him and his ex make out and stuff. I thought that you were going to say that's a little bit off of the beat.
Nah, that one didn't bother me, but like the dueling harmonicas seemed just a little bit like and there's a little bit of tension maybe between those two that like they might not fight.
Yeah.
That might not be what the problem is here.
Yeah.
Which I like that too. I like that there's like that little tease of that kind of shit too.
Right. Another thing, just like they're a few years out of high school, they're people that obviously never left town besides TJ, and it's not in a bad way. Like we always like in society we make fun of, oh that guy was really cool in high school, and then he's still that same dude now in my town that never left or whatever. Like usually that seems like a bad thing, but no, these people are just like hanging out. They do their shitty job, and then they want to hang out. Love it. I love that it's a fucking whodunit film that you don't know who it is. Like it's not Halloween where you know that Michael is Michael, or is the Shape. I like that whole part. Like, and then you're dealing with the red herrings and all that kind of shit.
Well, and it even works in for a movie that's full of like, like gore shots.
Mm-hmm.
There's also like a couple of weird like little tension jump scares and shit.
Right.
Which don't feel like necessarily pushed or contrived either.
Yeah, which are the worst.
But there's also a very, I know I said it like with the miner's suit, but like all around, like with the whodunit part too, there is like a kind of Scooby-Doo vibe to the whole thing.
Yes, because it's very, except for when there is the tension, it's a very lighthearted movie.
Yeah.
It's very 80s, lighthearted. We mentioned Meatballs before. It's very like that, like later age teen, like made for later age teenagers where shit's real, but it's still fun and you can still be a little vulgar and all that kind of stuff. Love it.
Yeah. No, I really like the movie. it's a 3-star for me. You know what I mean? Like, it's not. There's a bunch of shit that could have. Like, to me, a 5-star movie is Texas Chainsaw.
Okay.
You know what I mean? And like,
yeah,
a 3-star to me is still like a good movie. It's just not.
This just had all the right beats for me. Is my thing. Is why I think it's really good. Also, ever tried Boiled Heart?
Oh man, yeah. That. How do they not realize that that's a fucking heart? Like they're just like, oh, what's this gross thing you put in here? Like, well, that's a fucking human heart. So maybe call the cops. I don't know.
You said you said you had Moosehead before. Did you ever snort it?
I did not. Typically, when I'm snorting things in my younger days, they weren't liquid. It was usually not the route for liquid.
Yeah. Didn't want to just drown yourself.
No, man, no. You know, the other stuff smells better.
The virgins getting screwed. Love, as we said, love that. The implied virgins, I guess you would say. And
yeah, man, the idea that there was that scene where, like, when he gets hit with the fucking drill, it makes him push in, and then she opens her mouth and he just fucking drips blood out of his mouth into hers.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that, the fact that got cut and is lost.
It sucks.
Sucks, because it's, like, you could tell, and that's the one thing, like, you know, George Mahalka might be a dick or whatever, but you could tell he really cared about the craft of that scene.
Right.
And that it bugs him that it's gone.
Yeah. And then the last two I have, the last one I have is the ladder hanging. When they were trying to climb up the ladder to get away out of the mine, and then the dude just drops down, snaps his neck off of it, and drops to the floor. Oh, so good.
Oh, dude. And so, like, that is another scene that gets cut by the fucking MPAA.
Of course.
And the uncut version, that effect is so good.
Yeah.
With the way the body pulls off the fucking head. So good.
Yeah. And then lastly, on some podcasts and on other stuff, George just asked, well, what about a sequel? I would have fucking been all about it. Like, we talked about remakes. I would have fucking loved a sequel for The Miner. Like, 20 years, like, do it. 20 years later, something like that, like or even whatever the timeline was between Harry Warden actually doing the shit and then when the movie shot, do the same amount of time in between and have it come back like that. I would have loved that. I would. And I think he said that he even has a loose sequel written. But.
Yeah, I read an interview with him from, I want to say, 2018.
Okay.
Where he said that he was open to doing the sequel and that he wanted to bring back Axel, TJ, and Sarah, and that it was going to be, that Sarah was like the sheriff now.
Okay.
And like her and TJ have kids or whatever. So it would be like the focus at them, and then I guess he would like fucking own the mine or whatever, since it was his dad's mine.
Right.
But I think maybe they're all a little bit old at this
point.
No,
they still like when I saw them, they still look decent.
Yeah.
Salt and pepper maybe a little bit. Their facial features are really interesting too. What those guys like, because Axel has that manly face, and then so yeah, he looked good. But yeah, and Sarah still looks good. So yeah, I would love to see it personally.
And who knows, it might happen. It would be cool to have. It's very like Mad Max-ish that the original director would get to make some sort of sequel that long off. You know.
Right. Hey, Fury Road was my second favorite movie that year, behind Straight Outta Compton. So,
well, there you go.
Yeah.
So there's a little bit of hope for it. So by all means, if you have not seen My Bloody Valentine, this Valentine's Day, instead of blowing a bunch of money on shit that doesn't matter, get yourself a copy of that fucking Blu-ray and watch it. with your better half. And man, you won't be disappointed. It's a really good fucking movie, and we still shouldn't be out doing shit, so it's something to do while you're staying home.
Yep.
Well, Edman, thank you for coming on. Is there anything you would like to plug?
Get the fucking vaccine.
Okay.
At Ed Battis. You'll see it in the description of the podcast. Go check out my website that I haven't updated in a few years. settabphoto.com. Yeah, that's about it.
All right,
Can't
man.
wait to do another one of these with you. Always love chatting.
Yeah, man. At some point, we will definitely do another one of these. And again, thank you for the, all the essentially bootlegging that you do for me, so that I can.
Yeah, I mean, if I wasn't lazy and would drive down from Madison to Youngstown, I would totally just watch these, or even let you borrow my copies. It's just, this is the easier way, and it's technology. And I bought them, so it's not like it's anything different. It's like you renting them from the library. It's the same shit.
Allegedly bootlegging. We allegedly share files.
Yes.
So next month, I'm going to leave that as a surprise for now. But I think it might just be another holiday-related movie.
Mm-hmm.
But until then,
I'll be waiting in hell for you! Harry, I'm coming. This whole fucking town is going to die! We're coming back, you bastards! Sarah, be my bloody Valentine. Daddy, gone away. Harry Warden made you pay.
Once upon a time, on a sad Valentine, in a place known as Hanniger Mine, a legend began. Every woman and man would always remember the time, and those who remained were never the same. You could see the fear in their eyes. Once every year, as the 14th draws near, there's a hush all over the town. Or the legend they say on a Valentine's Day is a curse that'll live on and on, and no one will know as the years come and go of the horror from long time ago. 20 years came and went, and everyone spent the 14th in quiet regret. And those still alive know the secret survives in the darkness that looms in the night. For the legend they say on a Valentine's Day is a curse that'll live on, and no one will know as the years come and go of the horror from long time ago. In this little town, when the 14th comes round, there's a silence and fear in the air. Remember the morn that the legend was born, all the shock and the horror was there. For the legend they say on a Valentine's Day is a curse that'll live on, and no one will know as the years come and go of the horror from long time ago. And no one will know as the years come and go of the horror from long time ago.